Heavens pleaded for support. Humanity answered with the vessel that ended conflicts. Part 1. The council chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive structure built by a dozen different species over 3,000 years. Inside, representatives from 47 civilizations sat in their designated areas, each space designed for their specific biology. The air hummed with translation fields, turning thousands of different sounds into meanings everyone could understand. Ambassador Ash of the Empire stood at the speaking platform. Her people were tall and graceful, with skin that glowed softly in shades of blue and silver. Normally, carried themselves with dignity and calm. They were known across the galaxy as philosophers, mediators, and teachers. Their home world was a paradise of gentle weather and abundant life. War was something they studied in ancient history, not something they practiced. But today, Ash looked broken. Her glow had dimmed to almost nothing. Her hands shook as she gripped the platform's edge. "Honored Council," she began, her voice cracking. "The Empire formally requests military intervention against the swarm." Silence fell across the chamber. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The asking for war, it was like watching a priest pick up a sword. Ash continued, pushing through her obvious pain. 3 months ago, they entered our space without warning. We sent diplomatic envoys. They were destroyed. We offered territory, resources, technology, anything to avoid conflict. They ignored every message. They want only one thing: complete assimilation of our people into their hive mind. She activated a holographic display. Images appeared above the platform, showing burning cities and shattered orbital stations. Civilians ran through streets while creatures pursued them. Ships exploded in silent flashes. The images were recent, maybe hours old. "We have lost 18 colony worlds," Ash said, her voice hollow. 4 billion souls are gone. Our military, which was never designed for true warfare, has been reduced to 30% strength. We have perhaps 6 weeks before they reach our home system. After that, the people will cease to exist. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species that had been her friends and allies for decades. "We need help. We need soldiers, weapons, tactics. We need someone to teach us how to fight because we never learned." The representative, a floating crystalline being, spoke first. "The request is understood. However, they are a force unlike any we have faced. They number in the trillions. Their ships can be replaced faster than we can destroy them. Intervening would put our own people at risk." Others nodded in agreement. The representative, a large reptilian creature, added his thoughts. "The speak truth. They cannot be defeated by conventional military force. They have consumed 17 civilizations in the past century. Each time they grow stronger. We mourn for them, but we cannot sacrifice our own people in a war we cannot win." More voices joined in, all saying variations of the same thing. "We're sorry, we can't help. You're on your own." Ash felt her last hope dying. She had known this might happen, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Her people would die. 3,000 years of art, philosophy, music, and peace would vanish into the collective as if they had never existed. Then a voice cut through the murmurs. "They aren't asking you to win their war." Everyone turned. At the far end of the chamber, in a section designed for oxygen-breathing species, stood the human representative. His name was, and he looked nothing like the elegant beings that filled most of the council. He was short and broad, with dark skin marked by old scars. One eye was cybernetic, glowing faintly red. He wore a simple military uniform with medals that most species didn't recognize. Humans were new to the galactic community, barely a century since first contact. They came from a world classified as Category 9 on the habitability scale, what most species called a high gravity, extreme weather, aggressive predators, limited resources. Most civilized species wouldn't last a week on Earth without serious protection. Walked to the platform where Ash stood. He moved with a predator's grace, every step controlled and purposeful. Several representatives shifted nervously as he passed. "They're asking someone to teach them how to survive," said, his voice rough but clear. "There's a difference." The representative pulsed with skeptical colors. "And humanity believes it can teach what the rest of us cannot." His face showed no emotion. "We know about impossible wars. We've fought them. Against each other, against our own planet, against extinction itself. We're still here." He activated his own display. Earth appeared, spinning slowly in the holographic field. It looked beautiful from space, blue and green and white, but then showed the details. Hurricanes that could level cities, earthquakes that split continents, volcanoes that could darken the sky for years, temperature extremes that ranged from boiling to freezing, oceans full of creatures that could kill in seconds. "This is where we come from," said. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We survived by learning to adapt, to fight, to never give up even when everything said we should. And when we finally reached the stars, we brought those lessons with us." The representative leaned forward. "You speak of survival, the face annihilation. What can humanity offer that would make a difference?" Turned to look at Ash. She met his gaze, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes that surprised her. Not pity, not superiority, understanding. "We can offer what no one else here can," said. "Experience with hopeless situations, knowledge of how to fight when you're outmatched and outnumbered, and most importantly, we can offer the one thing that makes the difference between extinction and survival." "Which is?" they asked. "The will to do whatever it takes," replied. He looked back at the council. "Ambassador Ash, your people asked for military intervention. I need to be clear about what that means. If humanity agrees to help, we will send advisors, trainers, and military support. But we won't fight your war for you. We'll teach you how to fight it yourselves. It won't be easy. Your people will have to change. Some of what we teach you will go against everything your culture values. Are you willing to accept that?" Ash didn't hesitate. "Our culture won't exist at all if we don't survive. Yes, Ambassador, we accept whatever help humanity can provide." Nodded slowly. "Then I need to contact my government. The decision isn't mine alone to make." He turned to the council. "Give us 2 months. We'll send what we can." 2 months. Ash felt a mixture of hope and despair. 2 months might not be enough time, but it was more than she had before spoke up. The council session ended without any other species offering support. As the representatives filed out, many avoided looking at Ash. She understood. They were afraid. They were unstoppable, and everyone knew it. Approached her as she prepared to leave. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "I want you to understand something. Humanity doesn't enter conflicts lightly. We've seen too much war, caused too much destruction, but we also know what it's like to face extinction. No one helped us when we nearly destroyed ourselves. We had to figure it out alone. That's not going to happen to you." "Why?" Ash asked. "Your people barely know us. We've had minimal contact. Why would humanity risk its own soldiers for strangers?" His expression softened slightly. "Because someone has to. Because if we don't help when we can, then what was the point of surviving all those impossible situations? We didn't claw our way out of the dark just to watch others fall into it." He extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. Ash knew enough about human customs to understand. She reached out and clasped his hand. It was warm and calloused, the hand of someone who had worked and fought for everything he had. 2 months, repeated. Hold on that long and humanity will come. Ash returned to her ship and began the journey back to space. She sent messages ahead, telling her government what had happened. The response was mixed. Some were relieved that anyone had agreed to help. Others were worried about what accepting help from might mean. The High Command debated for days. Could they trust humanity? Would the humans try to take control? What if their methods were too brutal, too violent? They had built their entire civilization on the principle of peaceful coexistence. Could they abandon that, even to survive? In the end, desperation made the choice for them. They continued their advance. More worlds fell, more billions died, the needed help and only humanity had offered. As the 2 months passed, Ash wondered what form human help would take. A fleet of warships, a battalion of soldiers, military technology. She imagined various scenarios, trying to prepare herself and her people for what was coming. She had no idea, none of them did, because humanity wasn't sending just soldiers or ships. They were sending something that would change everything the thought they knew about war, peace, and what it meant to be strong. They were sending the Part 2. The alert came through every sensor net in the home system simultaneously. Something massive had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. Defense stations went to high alert, weapons charging even though everyone knew they wouldn't make a difference if they had arrived. But it wasn't the Ash stood in the command center of the orbital defense platform, staring at the readings that made no sense. The vessel that had arrived was enormous, bigger than their largest habitat stations, bigger than anything they had ever built. The computer struggled to categorize it, cycling through classifications before finally settling on one word: Dreadnought. "Open a communication channel," Ash ordered, her voice tight with tension. The main screen flickered to life. A human woman appeared, sitting in what was clearly a military command chair. She was tall for a human, with dark skin and close-cropped hair showing threads of gray. Her uniform was immaculate, covered in insignia that meant nothing to eyes. Behind her, the bridge of her ship stretched into the distance, filled with hundreds of crew stations. "This is Captain of the United Humanity Conflict Vessel," the woman said, her voice calm and professional. "We received your request for assistance, permission to enter the inner system." Ash found her voice. "Permission granted, Captain. Welcome to Prime. May I ask, what exactly is a conflict vessel?" Captain's expression didn't change. "You'll see soon enough, Ambassador. Is moving to high orbit around your primary world. We have a lot of work to do and not much time to do it." Over the next 6 hours, the move through the system like a small moon. As it approached the home world, more details became visible. The ship's hull was and pitted, marked by weapons fire and impacts. Gun batteries lined every surface, along with launch bays, sensor arrays, and systems that didn't recognize. It looked ancient and powerful, like something that had been fighting for centuries. When Ash finally boarded the ship, she felt overwhelmed. The corridors were huge, designed to move large numbers of people quickly. The walls were bare metal, functional, and undecorated. Everything spoke of efficiency and purpose. This was a ship built for war and nothing else. Or so she thought. Captain met her in a conference room that overlooked the ship's main hangar bay. Through the transparent wall, Ash could see hundreds of smaller vessels being prepared for launch. "Thank you for coming," Ambassador said, gesturing to a seat. "I know the must seem intimidating. That's by design, but I need you to understand what we've brought you." She activated a display showing the ship's schematic. "The is not just a warship, it's a mobile city. Current population, 112,000. That includes 15,000 soldiers, yes, but also 30,000 engineers, 12,000 medical personnel, 20,000 education specialists, and thousands more in support roles." Ash stared at the numbers. "You brought an entire city." "We brought what you need," replied. "Ambassador told you that we wouldn't fight your war for you. He meant it. The exists to do one thing: transform how civilizations handle conflict. We're going to teach your people everything we know about warfare, but more importantly, we're going to teach them how to survive it." Over the following days, humanity's plan became clear. It was more comprehensive than anything Ash had imagined. Human military advisors spread throughout the defense forces. They didn't take command. Instead, they stood beside officers, teaching, suggesting, correcting. They studied how thought and fought, then showed them techniques that had been proven across centuries of human warfare. Soldiers who had never held weapons learned to shoot, move, and communicate under fire. Human instructors were patient but demanding. They pushed the gentle beyond what they thought possible, then pushed them further. In the factories, human engineers worked alongside manufacturers. They showed them how to retool civilian production for military needs, how to build things that could survive combat conditions, how to maintain equipment in impossible situations. In the hospitals, human doctors taught healers about triage, about making impossible choices when resources were limited, about treating trauma both physical and mental. And in schools across the planet, human teachers explained the history of warfare, not to glorify it, but to help understand what they were facing and why certain tactics worked. Ash watched it all with mixed feelings. Part of her was grateful. The humans were professional, respectful, and genuinely trying to help, but another part of her mourned what her people were becoming. They were learning to kill efficiently, to think tactically, to see other beings as targets. It went against everything philosophy valued. She voiced these concerns to Captain during one of their regular meetings. "I understand," said, her expression sympathetic. "Believe me, I do. But you need to understand something about humanity. We didn't want to become warriors. We were forced into it by our own nature and our own world. Every human culture has weapons in its history because Earth demanded it. But we also learned something else." "What?" Ash asked. "That the best warriors are the ones who understand the cost of violence, who use it only when necessary and who work to end conflicts as quickly as possible." Leaned forward. "Your people will learn to fight, but they won't become us. They'll become something new, a civilization that understands both peace and war and can choose between them wisely." 3 weeks after they arrived, they attacked. Their fleet emerged from FTL in standard formation, hundreds of bioships bred for combat, carrying millions of warrior drones. They expected the same easy victory they had achieved before. They were wrong. The defense had been completely reorganized. Human advisors had studied tactics from historical records, identifying patterns and weaknesses. They had repositioned defensive stations, created overlapping fields of fire, and established fallback positions that could support each other. When they charged forward, they ran into a defense that actually understood how to fight. Gunners, trained by human veterans, didn't waste ammunition on wild firing. They picked their targets, aimed for weak points the humans had identified, and made every shot count. Defense stations that had been isolated now worked together, covering each other's blind spots. They adapted quickly, changing their approach. But for every adaptation, the defenders had a countermove. Human military advisors had fought countless wars against countless enemies. They had seen these tactics before. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, they had been driven back for the first time since entering space. The cost was heavy: 3 defense stations destroyed, thousands of casualties, multiple damaged ships, but the line had held. Ash stood in the command center, exhausted and shocked. Around her, officers celebrated with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. They had won. Not by much, not easily, but they had actually won. Captain's face appeared on the communication screen. She looked tired but satisfied. "Good work, Ambassador. Your people performed well." "We couldn't have done it without your advisors," Ash replied honestly. "Maybe not this time," said. "But you will, that's the point. Every battle your people learn more. Every engagement they get better. In 6 months you won't need us anymore." But the war wasn't over. They regrouped and attacked again 3 days later. This time they brought more ships, more soldiers, more determination. The pattern repeated over the following weeks. They would attack, they would defend, and both sides would adapt. It became a grinding war of attrition, exactly the kind of conflict they usually won through sheer numbers. Except something had changed. They weren't fighting alone anymore. Every battle was observed by human analysts who identified new patterns and developed new counters. Every casualty was treated by human medical teams who kept more soldiers alive and fighting. Every damaged ship was repaired by human engineers who worked miracles with limited resources. And slowly, impossibly, the balance began to shift. The Advance stalled. They couldn't understand what had happened. The prey species that should have collapsed was getting stronger. Every attack cost them more than the last. Their bioships took longer to replace than expected because they had learned to target their breeding centers. In this command center, Captain studied the strategic displays with her senior staff. The ship's military commander, a veteran named General Martinez, pointed to several key systems. "They're overextended," he said. "They pushed deep into space expecting easy victories. Now they're stuck in a grinding war they can't win quickly. Their supply lines are vulnerable." "Recommendations?" asked. "Launch a counteroffensive. Hit their logistics hard. Force them to retreat or watch their forward fleet starve." Turned to Ash, who had been invited to the meeting. "Ambassador, what do you think?" Ash looked at the displays, seeing her people's territory marked in blue, the holdings in red, and the contested zones in orange. 3 months ago, she couldn't have interpreted these displays. Now, thanks to human education, she understood exactly what she was seeing. "I think we need to end this war," she said quietly. "Not just push them back, end it completely." "Agreed," said, "but that requires something more than military victory." "What do you mean?" Ash asked. Captain smiled slightly. It wasn't a happy expression. "It means it's time for Lesson 2, How to Win the Peace." Part 3. The conference room aboard the had been transformed. Gone were the military displays and tactical maps. Instead, the walls showed peaceful images, planets, civilizations, natural wonders from hundreds of worlds. In the center of the room sat a single table, circular, with no head position. Around it were chairs designed for 3 different body types. Ambassador had arrived 2 days earlier, joining Captain and her crew. Now he stood beside Ash, both of them waiting for something that most of the galaxy thought was impossible. A delegation was coming. "I still can't believe they agreed," Ash said softly. His face showed a grim smile. "They're losing. They know it. They have never faced an enemy that could actually match them tactically. They've spent centuries conquering soft targets. Now they're stuck in a grinding war against opponents who were trained by the most experienced warriors in the known galaxy." "But they've never negotiated before," Ash pointed out. "Every conflict ends in total victory or total defeat for them." "That's because no one ever gave them a third option," replied. "We're about to change that." The shuttle docked precisely on time. The beings that emerged moved with disturbing coordination, their actions synchronized by the hive mind that connected them. They were warriors, that much was clear from their carapaces and weapon ports, but they came unarmed, as agreed. Captain greeted them formally. "Welcome aboard the I am Captain of United Humanity. This is Ambassador and Ambassador Ash of the Empire. We appreciate your willingness to meet." The drone stood motionless for a moment, then one spoke in a buzzing, mechanical voice. We speak with one mind across 13 trillion individuals. We do not understand this meeting. We conquer or we are conquered. There is no third state." "That's what we're here to discuss," said calmly. "Please sit." The negotiations began simply. They wanted to know why the war had changed. How had the soft, philosophical suddenly become dangerous opponents? Explained about human training, about the fundamental transformation in military capability. "You taught them to kill efficiently," the mind observed. "This is logical, but it does not explain why they now match us in adaptation speed." "Because we didn't just teach them tactics," replied. "We taught them how to think about conflict, how to analyze, adapt, and overcome. Those are skills that transfer beyond just fighting." They were silent for a long moment, processing this information across their vast collective consciousness. Then they asked the question that changed everything. "Why do you help them? They are not your species. Their survival does not benefit you genetically or territorially. Leaned back in his chair. That's where you're wrong. It does benefit us, just not in ways you understand. Let me show you something. He activated a holographic display showing Earth. Not the peaceful blue marble visible from space, but the reality beneath. The storms, the quakes, the predators, the thousand ways the planet tried to kill its inhabitants every day. This is where humanity came from, said. A category 9 on the habitability scale. Most species couldn't survive a week there without advanced technology. We know of, the replied. They produce strong warriors. This explains your combat efficiency. That's not the point, continued. He changed the display showing human history, wars, devastation, nuclear fire, civilizations rising and falling. We didn't just fight our planet, we fought each other. For thousands of years, we killed our own kind over resources, territory, ideology, or simple misunderstanding. We came within decades of making ourselves extinct multiple times. The seemed interested now, yet you survived. How? We learned, said simply. We learned that survival isn't just about being the strongest or the most numerous. It's about adaptation, cooperation, and knowing when to fight and when to find another way. He showed them more history. The peace treaties, the international organizations, the slow, painful process of humans learning to work together instead of destroying each other. It wasn't a simple story or a clean one. There were setbacks, failures, and continuing struggles. But the overall trend was clear. Humanity had stepped back from the edge of self-destruction. You see, explained, we realized something crucial. Winning isn't the same as surviving. You can win every battle and still lose everything that matters. So we changed our approach. We started building instead of just destroying. We started looking for solutions instead of just victories. The process this silently. Ash watched them, seeing the subtle movements of their antennae and mandibles that indicated deep discussion within the hive mind. Finally, they spoke. Your species is inefficient. You waste resources on non-combat activities. You maintain individual identities instead of merging into an optimal collective. Yet you claim this makes you stronger. Not stronger, Captain interjected. More resilient, more adaptable, more capable of surviving the unexpected. They have conquered 17 civilizations. That's impressive. But you've also lost countless drones and ships in the process. Your victories come at enormous cost. Cost is irrelevant when resources are infinite, they replied. But resources aren't infinite, said sharply. That's the lie you've been telling yourselves. Every world you conquer has limits. Every species you assimilate takes time to integrate. And now you've run into an enemy that can actually hurt you, that can make your expansion more expensive than it's worth. He leaned forward, his cybernetic eye glowing brighter. Let me tell you what happens next if this war continues. The backed by human advisors and training will grind you down. It will take years, maybe decades, but they'll push you back system by system. The cost to you will be catastrophic. And here's the thing, other species are watching. They see that they can be stopped. How long before they stop being afraid of you? How long before they start forming alliances to push you back? They were silent for a full minute. In their hive mind, trillions of individuals debated across light years of space. Ash held her breath, hoping that gamble would work. What do you propose? They finally asked. Smiled slightly. A treaty. You withdraw from space completely. In exchange, humanity will provide you with technological assistance for sustainable expansion. We'll teach you techniques for making marginal worlds habitable, for increasing resource efficiency, for growing without constant conquest. Why would you help us? They asked suspiciously. Because helping you costs less than fighting you, replied bluntly. And because we've seen what happens when powerful species have no choice but constant expansion. It ends badly for everyone, including the expanding species. He changed the display again, showing various human technologies, terraforming, agricultural optimization, energy efficiency systems. We have knowledge that could allow you to support your population without endless conquest. All you have to do is stop trying to assimilate everyone you meet. The negotiations continued for 3 more days. They were cautious, suspicious, and aggressive in their questioning. But slowly, they began to see the logic in what proposed. Fighting that was becoming expensive. The prospect of other species gaining confidence and forming alliances was worrying, and the technology humanity offered could genuinely solve many of the resource pressures that drove expansion. On the 4th day, they reached an agreement. They would withdraw from all territory. They would establish a buffer zone and agree to a non-aggression pact. In exchange, humanity would provide technological assistance and establish trade relationships. When the delegation departed, Ash felt exhausted but hopeful. She found standing in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "Do you really think they'll honor the treaty?" she asked. "Yes," said without hesitation, "because it's in their interest to do so. They are logical. Once they see that cooperation is more efficient than conquest, they'll adapt their behavior. It might take time, but it will happen. And if it doesn't?" His expression hardened. "Then they will come back and will teach them a harder lesson." Over the following weeks, the withdrawal proceeded smoothly. Forces still advised by human officers their lost territory. The damage was enormous. Billions dead, worlds devastated, an entire civilization traumatized. But they had survived. On the day they prepared to depart, Ash stood on the observation deck with Captain, watching the massive ship systems power down from wartime readiness. "I need to ask you something," Ash said. "Your ship is called. In human mythology, that's the end of the world, isn't it?" Nodded. "The end of the world, the twilight of the gods, the final battle. Yes." "Why name a ship after the apocalypse?" "Because that's what it represents," replied. "Not destruction for its own sake, but the end of one era and the beginning of another. In the myth, destroys the old world, but survivors build something new and better from the ashes." She gestured to the viewport, to the world spinning below them. "Your civilization ended 3 months ago. The peaceful, philosophical who never fought wars, they're gone. But something new has been born. A civilization that understands both peace and conflict, that can choose when to negotiate and when to fight. That's stronger than either extreme." "We've lost so much," Ash said quietly. "Our innocence, our certainty, our belief that reason alone could solve every problem." "But you gained something more valuable," countered. "You gained the knowledge of how to survive in a dangerous galaxy. You gained the ability to protect yourselves and others. And most importantly, you gained a choice. You're not helpless anymore." She turned to face Ash directly. "The exists for one purpose, to end conflicts. Not by destroying everyone involved, but by transforming the situation so that fighting becomes unnecessary. We teach species how to defend themselves, yes, but we also teach them how to find alternatives to endless war. That's what makes us different from every other military force in the galaxy." "And if conflict comes again?" Ash asked. "Then you'll know how to handle it," said firmly. "That's the real weapon we gave you, not guns or tactics or strategies, but the knowledge of when to fight, when to negotiate, and when to simply refuse to participate in someone else's vision of endless war." They departed the next morning, its massive bulk sliding out of orbit and accelerating toward the system's edge. Thousands of human personnel stayed behind as advisors and teachers, but the ship itself was needed elsewhere. There were always more conflicts to resolve, more civilizations to help, more species that needed to learn humanity's hard-won lessons about survival. Ash watched it go, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The humans had saved her people, but they had also changed them forever. There would never again be the innocent philosophers who believed that every problem could be solved with words alone. But perhaps that was good. Perhaps innocence, while beautiful, was a luxury that could be afforded only by those protected by others. now that could protect themselves and maybe, one day, protect others as well. In the months that followed, news of what happened spread across the galaxy. They had been stopped, not destroyed, not defeated in the traditional sense, but actually negotiated with. It was unprecedented. Other species began to look at humanity with new respect and perhaps a little fear. The humans from Earth, the who had nearly destroyed themselves before learning to survive, had proven something important. They had shown that the capacity for violence wasn't the same as the need for it, that the strongest warriors were often the ones most committed to finding peaceful solutions, that ending conflicts was harder than winning them, but infinitely more valuable. And aboard the, now traveling to another crisis in another system, Captain sat in her command chair and reviewed reports about their next assignment. Another war, another desperate species, another chance to teach the lessons humanity had learned in blood and fire. She allowed herself a small smile. The work was never done, but that was fine. As long as there were conflicts to resolve, the and its crew would be there, not to fight wars but to end them. That was what it meant to be human, to survive the impossible, to learn from the darkest moments, and to use that knowledge to help others avoid the same mistakes. It wasn't a grand destiny or a noble calling. It was simply what needed to be done. And humanity, having come so close to extinction so many times, understood that better than anyone.